All right, grasshoppers around the whatever universes. Somebody said to me there's like 20 some universes or something we know of now, and I think this show goes all of them. Imagine just some alien sitting up there in Uranus or something, and there's some planet listening to the show. Well, how about the video I sent out yesterday of the a young girl trying out the bidet for the first time? Can you imagine Tom Smith sitting there, that same look on his face? He enjoys it way too much. Okay, Rangers tonight, 8 o'clock. Obviously, a big game, tied 2-2. They need to play better. Their big guys obviously need to get going. But Florida's doing a good job with Kreider and Zibanejad and Panarin. But obviously, they need to play better, be successful. I mean, they've got Shesterkin, and he's been able to steal some. Well, I shouldn't say steal some games. That's not fair. You know, obviously Goudreau and Trocheck, those guys have really played well. And we're gonna find out things later on because obviously Fox doesn't look like he's at 100%. You always find out things after the playoffs are done. Injuries guys have got. Condre Miller played better in Game 4. I feel bad for him too. I just don't know. Like he's a super talented guy. He's shown how good he can be. He can skate, big. He just and again, I don't know him, so he just like having a little bit more of that jam. Like somebody goes to hit him, I see him kind of like getting out of the way instead of like the cross-checking the guy in the arms. And the next time the guy goes to hit you, you won't want to do it anymore. So, all right, Matthew, how are you doing, you magical creature? Yeah, Fox has to be hurt. He's just not playing. And to his credit, even though he's hurt, it looks like he's hurt. He's still doing a good job in power plays, moving the puck out of his own zone. So, but again, that's part of the playoffs. You see Mark Messier talk about it all the time, where it's a long, like to win a Stanley Cup, it's literally painful. You have to go through a lot of stuff physically and mentally to do that. So, but the big game tonight, obviously back at home, the Garden should be rocking. Part of the problem is too, and I guess it's me speculating at the Garden. During the regular season, it's more like the regular Ranger fans that are there, really getting into it, making them noise. Obviously, the tickets are so expensive now. The people that are coming still would be big Ranger fans, but probably a little bit more corporate, just against a lot of money, and maybe not accustomed to getting the Garden going the way it can go. Again, that's me speculating. It makes sense if that's the case, but again, that's on the team too. They've got to get going. Give the fans something to cheer about. So, all right. So we're going to go regular show here today at 10 o'clock. We'll continue on at 11 o'clock or before that. We have a little surprise guest. I might as well tell you who it is. It's Jeremy Schaap is coming on. He works for ESPN. His father, Dick Schaap, was famous sports broadcaster. So Jeremy will be joining us. He's doing a documentary that's coming out next week. Not doing it, it's done, obviously. Coming out next week on the 94 Ranger team. Interviewed Messier, Leach, and Richter, and all those guys. So we went into my first year in the league, went to the semifinals, lost to the Islanders. My sixth year in the league, we went to the semifinals, lost to Montreal. And then in both cases, those teams went on to win the cup. That first year was great because it's the first year that you think it's going to happen all the time. And I've watched these games. That was a fantastic team, like a real team effort. Good goaltending by Steve Baker. Carol Vadney was still playing. Dave Maloney was still here. Gresh, Bubba, Eddie Hospodar, Chris Katsopoulos. A lot of great guys up front, too. Like Peter Wallin played fantastic. Jerry Gillis. Lance Nethery was up. He really played a big role, too. And all the guys. Anders Nolfi. That was a fun team to play for. Like, we just never quit. We get behind in games, battle. And William Haynes, how you doing, you magical veteran from Chicago there? So again, people are just joining. We got Jeremy Schaap coming up at 11 o'clock or before that, if he can make it. So that'll be interesting. He'll be talking about his documentary that he has coming out next week, I believe it is. He'll give us more details. It's I'll post on. They sent me a flyer regarding that too, and I'll post that online. So that'll be fun to watch. Again, he's excellent at it. He's been in ESPN for years now. Morning, Deb. How are you doing? So Rangers tonight again at the Garden. How about Edmonton? I don't know if they smoked Vancouver or Dallas, but it wasn't another 1-goal game with Mavin. So I'm assuming it's going to be another close game. Fun event last night was at Central Park, and then JP Morgan Chase had a 5K run there. It was pretty cool. I think I can't remember, it was to raise money for something. So I was there. I held the ribbon with a young woman working for Parks and Recreation. So that's fun. I've done that 3 years in a row now. So it's pretty cool. I see a girl working for the New York Rangers, Taylor Harmon, a very sweet person, was running in it. But there's so many people running that it was one of those time things. You really did this. Your time didn't start until you actually crossed the start line. So there's a lot of people. And I stayed around for about another. So what we did is we had the tape up for the male winner and for the female winner, and then we gave out awards after. And then they continued to run. It goes on for, I don't know how long, because I stayed for half an hour, 45 minutes, because I wanted to see Taylor there. But I'm going to give her a hard time today. Ask her if she got lost. I kept waiting for her, and she wasn't there. So, but it's cool, though. It's a nice run. Very good hanging at Central Park. Frank Loretta, how are you doing, brother? Good to see you. Why does Barry Beck hate Hospodar? Well, I believe they were roommates, too, when they played together. And, we got brawls and everything. They're backing each other up. So it did become, I think Eddie, Eddie did some things after he got traded away. Like we played a game up at Hartford when he was at Hartford. And Jan Eriksson, who wasn't a dirty player at all, he was coming up the boards out of our zone. And Eddie just flies into him and gives him an elbow in the head, just for no reason whatsoever. There's nothing going on. And he turtled, and Barry and Nicky Fatigue and everybody was chasing Eddie down. And as a funny scene, it was a big scrum. And then they got Eddie up and they tried to get him to the locker room, and people were chasing him down the ice. So there's that. And I think there's a couple other things too that Eddie did. And I think he was yapping at Barry. There's one time in Philadelphia too, funny scene, because you could hear Barry talking on the TV. Eddie had elbowed or cross-checked Gresh in the head. Gresh went to hit Eddie, and Eddie cross-checked him. George McPhee stepped in and had a real good scrap against Eddie. And then Eddie was yapping at Barry a little while later, and Barry was heard saying, I believe he said, shut up, I'm going to get George to beat the crap out of you or something like that. And it's pretty funny because you can hear it on TV. You just don't hear all that talk. But so there's a few incidents like that. And so Eddie knew what he was doing. He stood the podcast. Megyn Kelly on her podcast just said Trump and I have had our moments, but was dropping F-bombs on Joe Biden, the judge, Joe Biden, for all the crap going on. She was dropping F-bombs, or Trump was, huh? Megyn Kelly. She got her own show now. Like is she on like Tucker Carlson has his own show now, really, right? He's not on the network. Oh yeah. George McPhee was what I think pound for pound the toughest player I've ever seen. Small little guy. Yeah, and I've told the story many times. I played against him in college, and he used to be running around. I thought I was the toughest guy in the world, and I was like, "Get away from me!" And then I saw him when he came up to be pro the first time we played together. And he got in a scrap with Bob Nystrom, and I stepped in the first time thinking George was going to get beat up, and he got mad at me. And after he and Nystrom came in the box, he went again and went at it, and man, it was a good fight. Ooh. And he looked at George. He's like, "There's nothing to do him. Just this tiny little guy." But he could throw bombs. He was, it's tough. Kelly showed Biden at pandering to buy show was filled with lies. Yeah, I know. Yeah, I know. Politics. Lorraine, how are you doing, magical creature? Good to see you. Again, people that are just joining, we have Jeremy Schaap coming up at either before 11 o'clock or 11 o'clock. He was had some other things to do. He's promoting a podcast, a documentary he's got coming out on ESPN about the 94 Ranger team. Yes, and I'll post a flyer that they had sent me. It seems like it's very interesting. And interviewed Messier, John Delapina, the writer, Graves, Richter, all those guys. Megan has her own. Oh yeah, she has her own podcast. That's right. Age well, really hot, smart. Jack. You sexist. I'm just kidding. I'm kidding. Let me see here. I think Kurt Fraser. I think Kurt Fraser than George McPhee and Ryan Vandenbush. But those guys were, well, maybe not Ryan Vandenbush, but Fraser was bigger. He was tough too, yeah. There was a lot of tough guys back then. I've told this so many times, but I remember coming up and thinking, I'm going to go fight everybody in the National Hockey League. And then you get here. And then you realize, like every team we played on back then, it was Nystrom, Gillies, and Wilson, Holmgren, and Cochran, and Philadelphia, half the team up in Boston. Washington having tough guys, and then you go down and you go west there. You go to Edmonton, for example. They've got Semenko there and other guys. Calgary always had some Tim Hunter and all those guys. So yeah, it was a wild league back then. And the guys are still great athletes now too. Yeah, that's a good call there, Ira. Eddie Johnson didn't fight as much as George did, but yeah, he was tough. Like I think surprisingly tough too. Like so many times he'd fight and he'd just stand there and just throw him. George the same way. He gave it to. He had a few good scraps, but he gave it to Dave Longeman, and like really quickly cut him wide open too. And he went down, stayed down for a while. He was hurt, and Longeman was a tough kid too. He was good. He was sorry, but McPhee, Ruskowski, yeah. Those guys, Ruskowski was the same way. Oh man, he was a scrappy guy too, and he was small. He's one of those guys that you can't win because he's small. So if you beat him up, then you're supposed to beat him up. But if he could beat you up, he was a tough enough player. I remember I took him to the boards one time. He came down, I slashed him in the arms, punched him in the head. And he didn't back down one bit. He was coming back, and it's funny. Funny times back then. You start to back in if you do. Nowadays, remember, we got it from. So Barry is over in Hong Kong. I've had a tough. I'm sorry, Frank, don't mean to disrespect you if anyway. I'm not sure if you've heard all the stuff that's happening, but he's gone through a really tough period here the last 2 years. He was actively involved in the Mark Pavlich situation. Mark ultimately took his life, and then Barry's son got murdered up in Canada in a road rage incident, and then he's been through some health issues now. I think he had prostate surgery, and he had just had another surgery. Yeah, Stan Jonathan. Yeah, good call by you, Ira. Same way. Ty Domi. I saw Ty Domi. I watched the video of him fighting Probert, and Ty Domi's head was like a cement block. He just never. There was no point in hitting him in the head. He just didn't hurt him. Gary Howe was tough. Yeah. Gary Howe was tough, dude. Yeah. I don't know if he was as tough as McPhee or those other guys as far as fighting. Maybe the same game Willie. I should be careful. I say it that way. Polonich. Yeah. Again, scrappy guy, but I don't know if he'd, as good a fighter as others, but let me see here. I seen your video that you sent for Rick Hayes induction. Okay. So Rick Hay was my old junior coach at Bramley Blues. So he got inducted in the Brampton Hall of Fame, which I was very fortunate to be part of as well. And they asked me to do a video for him. And I've talked many times. Rick Conley, my college coach, and Herb Brooks played huge roles in my career, and not just career, but as a person too. So I was very honored when they asked me to do a video for Rick Hay. And it's cool, like thinking about the old memories. Because again, I was at I think when I first met him, I was 15 years old or something. And I was a good player, big, strong farm boy and all that. But I didn't know about work ethic. And, I worked hard on the farm and everything, but I didn't know being more intense on the ice. And he certainly taught me. Oh, man, we do breakout drills. I've talked about it so many times, but he was just always on me. And I'm like, why is he picking on me? But now you look back at it, he wasn't picking on me. He saw something in me, and he knew I had to improve my breakouts. So he was it seemed like 2 hours of him yelling at me, which it was not, but it just at that age, it seemed like seriously, I get a sick feeling in my stomach. I was like, oh God, here we go. We're doing breakouts again. So Polonich was dirty. Yes, he was. Yeah. So maybe not as much in the fighting way, although he did, but let me see. Yeah, I'm glad you guys are writing this in. There's a lot of guys that weren't as big. Hey guys, Danny Gare. Yeah. Small fighter. Danny Gare could really, yeah, he was good. We had him on our Full Change podcast, and he was talking about how he was smart. He wore that big helmet, and he put his head down so people really couldn't hit him as easily in the face. But he was, he was game too. We played a game at Madison Square Garden. I knew his younger brother, Maury Gare, went to Northern Michigan after me. He was coach, so I got to meet him. And so Danny, he was with Buffalo, I believe, Buffalo or Detroit, I can't remember. And they were playing bad, so they didn't even come out for warm-ups. They had a big team meeting. And so they came out for the start of the game, and he knew I'd fight. So he was trying to get his team going, and I wasn't going to help him get his team going. He said, come on, let's go. No, I'm not helping you get your team going. He was funny talking to him. Excuse me. Kotze, Mel, Ted Sayer walk into a bar. Outside. That's a good question there. No, I don't go to bars anymore. I spent enough time in bars in the past. So fun event. I was talking about before. Fun event. That's a great event last night at Central Park. We're at 72nd and Central Park West, right by Central Park, obviously. But so it's fun. Really, the 5K. Some of these. So it's all financial people, like Barclays Bank and all. It's not. I should say it's all, but largely they're all got their own T-shirts on from their company. So it's a lot of fun. We hold the tape there at the end for the winners, and then we give out the awards. Beautiful young Asian woman won for the women, and she was talking how she was in Grand Canyon last weekend, ran 26 miles in Grand Canyon, some race there or something. And then she's running. This is the 5K, so for her it was nothing, but great shape, very nice person. Actually, a young girl that went to school with my youngest son, Cody, Ryan, New York, was there yesterday. Beautiful woman, married, pregnant with her first child. Can't remember her name. It's awful. Wow. Yeah, Frank, I'd say feed in Jonathan. Yeah. George just had that special something about it. I don't know where it was. It just where it came from. It was just he would just stand there and throw them. What do we got here? Do I think the Rangers will win the series? Yes, I do. Probably go 7. Shesterkin has to play the same way he's playing. And they do, like they've been kind of playing with fire a little bit. They don't have their big guys going all the way. Now, I don't know if that's them not playing as well as they should or Florida doing a really good job against them. Now, they are at home, so matchups are easier for the home team. They get the last change. So if there's something that Lavalette wants to do to get certain people away from particularly Panarin, Shesterkin, and Kreider, I'll tell you, Lafreniere, man, and again, I don't want to make it sound like he told you so, but that's the event. You got to wait for these young kids, right? That one is a game 3 where he scored the 2 backhand goals. The one where he toe dragged through 2 or 3 guys, then put backhand in. Oh my God, that was like what you'd like to do. I think he's at the point where you need to get him on the power play if you can. The problem is, who do you take off the power play? Because those guys like Panarin, for example, if you take him off, do you run the risk of him losing his confidence? So. That was a good fight. That was a fight here where Glenn Hannon was on the bench. And he was whooping it up on the bench because Georgia gave it to pretty good. I think Tocchet must have got hurt or something because he was mad. And Glenny was going nuts, banging on the girl looking at him like, it was a good fight, Glenny. But Glenny was like that. He didn't care. He was excited about it. So tonight that the other teams don't have. Tonight that pressure might overwhelm. No. Well, certainly the 4 teams that are playing right now, or even the last 8 teams that get in the playoffs, there's pressure on everybody. But I mean, there's always pressure, but there's really nobody. Like in the past, there's always like one team that they're the team everybody looked to win. And I don't think that's you don't want it like that now. That's more parity in the league. There isn't like that one team that you think is the best team to win. Like all 4 teams that are playing right now could win. The one team that kind of doesn't surprise me, but is Edmonton, because they really don't have goaltending. So that's the tough part. The defense has to play better. Again, we don't know injuries. Lindgren just shows up all the time and does his job, right? Let me see here. Evan Rodriguez has left the Panthers. He's in Hollywood getting Oscar. Oh, I know, yeah. Yeah, and then he must have been saying to the trainer, like, check my back or something. The trainer was looking at it, he's rubbing his back. He wasn't hurt. He didn't even want to go off the ice. They made him go off, which he had to because the trainer came on for him. He wasn't hurt. He was diving. Yeah, he barely hit him. You know what? I know it sounds bad because he gets penalties, but I like when Trouba does that because if you're a player now coming into the Rangers zone and Trouba's on the ice, you're thinking, where is he? And I'm assuming that's partly why he does it. Maybe he just snaps, but that's what the Rangers need is that mentality that you better like Trocheck's like that. He's like, I don't know if he's a physical guy, but you tell he's totally into it. He's yapping at everybody else. He's the kind of guy you'd hate to play against, but you love having on your team. So, that was a good scrap right at Madison Square Garden. Well, I think what happened is that Rodriguez has fallen down, and I think Trouba really wasn't going after his head. But by the time he got to him, Rodriguez had fallen down and hit him. Yeah, it was really a glancing blow. It wasn't. Yeah, but I'm sure the Florida people say it's a terrible hit. We're going to look at it. Then as a bit of a diving at. That's pretty good. You said that way. Yeah. Randy Holt, he's a tough guy too. Yeah. He wasn't around much. I don't think he played much. I think he played like 2 or 3 years after I got in the league, but his reputation was pretty. He had set some record for penalty minutes in a game, 40 penalty minutes in a game. So he was the tunnel. That was right back. Yeah. That's an interesting pairing, isn't it? PK Subban and Mark Messier. And listen, I give PK Subban a lot of credit for he knows what he's doing. He's being flamboyant and controversial and loud and the whole bit because that's most like Mark Messier. He won't do that. That's just not who he is. He doesn't want to do that. Would he be more? He'd probably be more effective if he did, but that's just not Mark's personality. He's very stoic. Speaks intelligently. I'm sure that he. I'd like to hear what Mark Messier has to say about working with PK Subban, because again, the total opposite as players, right? So Mark is the ultimate winner, leader, captain, competitor, and PK just listen. Call it like it is. He just was. He was a selfish player. I mean, he was more concentrated on getting himself ready for after the game, which is, you understand. Okay, you have a whole life to live after hockey's over. You understand that. But if I'm a player, so if I'm playing with PK Subban, okay, he comes up, he wins the Norris Trophy, his best defenseman. I'm saying this is great. We're going to win championships now. We got a player like that on our team, and then it's all about him. Like in so many different ways. Like if a referee made a bad call against him, maybe he had a temper tantrum and all the slew footing near the end of his career. It just became like you could help our team so much to win, and you're concentrating more like your after career. So that's why I don't have much respect for him. Do I think he's great as a broadcaster? I think he's fantastic because he's loud, he's controversial. Same thing with Biz. I can't remember what's Biz's first name. Biz, it's awful. Everybody just calls him Biz all the time, but he's really good. He gets on the Ranger fans. He knows what he's doing. He doesn't really care one way or the other about Ranger fans. He's kind of get them going, like saying he hates the Ranger fans or whatever it is. So yeah. Randy Holt was great at 30. A total screwball. He had that reputation when he played against us. Like, oh God, where's he? Just like Trouba's got that reputation now too. Let me see. Yeah. On X, the Rangers should dress 7 defensemen and move Miller to wing. Seems a little. Yeah. Well, Dukes is, he's the same wing. He likes to say controversial stuff. Listen, they've done stuff like that before. I mean, like when Gresher's playing, a lot of times we just 7 defensemen, Gresher play forward. It wasn't as much to get somebody else going. Like it wasn't to get him going, but it's just we had 6 other defensemen were good. Gresh could play too, and if we ever got injuries or penalty problems, like that's what happened at game 2 of the series in 1980-81 against LA. We had that big brawl, and we dressed 7 defensemen, Gresh being one of them, and then Barry Beck, Chris Kotsopoulos, Eddie Hosper all got thrown out, and then Dave Mooney got hurt, so we were down to 3 defensemen, Gresh and Badnai. Man, that was great. You're just so tired at the end, but you're into it so much. Yeah, Dukes, 7 defensemen. Well, okay. I think what you're talking about with Miller too is that Miller, like we talked, I think is just his 6th year playing defense. So, in fairness to him, that's quite the leap because defense is different. You've got to read. There's so many things you have to think about when you're out there that just after a while, it becomes natural that what are the ice conditions, what's the score of the game, who you're on the ice with, who you're on the ice against. Reading the play. If you got a back checker coming to play, where's the breakout pass? So, like with forwards, there's still things to think about when you're a forward, but it's just not as much. So then again, if you're a defenseman, you make a mistake very often, it costs the team. So you really got to be, on your game. So in fairness to Miller, so listen, I started playing when I was 6 years old, didn't turn pro till I was 21. So it's that 15 years of playing defense, and it's just constantly learning. So you don't even have to think about things after a while. So it doesn't even seem like a big thing, but it is if you really break it down and analyze it. Trying to teach somebody to play defense. So, in credit to him, and he's a great skilled player. Miller is. Again, I just like to see him be a little bit. It may not be in his nature, but I'd like to see him being a little bit nastier. Like I said, there's been a few times guys go to hit him, he steps out of the way. He's a big-bodied guy. You'd rather make them pay. Like let them come to hit you, get your hands in tight, and kind of cross-check them on the arms, and then you keep doing that over and over. It's just a little thing, but now it happened over and over. So now they start thinking, geez, I'm not going to hit him again because he's just going to cross-check me, or else they take a bad penalty because they're mad. I wrote Larry Brooks about Miller going backwards months ago, and he agreed. His 2 giveaways led to goals should lead to a shifting. Well, and I know the tendency is to bench him, and Lavalette did the exact opposite. He put him on the ice right away after the second turnover because they need him to be playing. They need all those guys. You can't just have 4 or 5 guys in defense playing and playing well. And if you sit him on the bench, obviously they know the player, they know the person. If you sit him on the bench, do you lose him mentally? Does he now sits there and is thinking about, I let my teammates down, it was a bad play. Now he gets worse. So you put him right on the ice, back on the ice again. You're saying, hey, listen, you're a big part of our team. We need you to play. So get back out there. That was a bad play. Didn't work out the way he wanted to. And it wasn't just the turnovers that he didn't like, and I'm sure they talked to him about it. It was his reaction after the turnovers. Like you don't want to run around and make another mistake, but you do want to stop the play from again they're on a penalty kill situation too, so it's even harder. But it's that bearing down after and saying, "Oh man, I made a mistake. Now we got to make up for it. I got to make sure they don't score." So it's that really mental thing. So I do get the wanting to bench him, but they need him playing. I mean, he can be a big part. When he just last year or whatever, there's some stretches I saw when he played, man, he was skating with the puck and big. That's, to me, that's his best game, is when he's skating with the puck and moving. If you take some, can that hurt Miller's confidence? Yeah. Yeah, if you take Miller, that's the thing. So if you can, I know it sounds strange to say this, but there's some, and again, players are different. Like it seems like with me, and I've spoken to Miller briefly, so I don't know him at all, but it just seems to me that he's a little bit more of a, maybe thinks too much, right? Like he's, I know it's strange to say, but it's almost better when you have a short memory. If you make a good play, you gotta move on from the good play, because you got more to do. If you make a bad play, it's the same thing. You gotta move on. You can't give the attitude that you don't care. You have to care, and your teammates have to know that you care. But in the middle of a game, you make a bad play, you can't dwell on it. You've got to move on. And that's, again, like I said, with Lavalette putting him on the ice, I'm assuming that was his thought process, that we need to get this kid back on the ice again, because he needs to play for us. So let me see. Yeah, I was right. Tighten up, get the puck on. We need to keep losing. Yes, but again, we talked this before, where you're, like in this case, you're a Ranger fan. So when you watch them play, you see them play all the time. So when they make mistakes, you see the mistakes all the time. But that's pretty much it. Like if you talk to the Florida fans, I'm sure they'd say the same thing with certain guys on their teams, that they see the mistakes that they make all the time. We maybe don't see them all the time, but we don't see them all the time. So we don't see all the mistakes that they're making. And again, the game has changed that way too, where defensemen now, like when I played, it was more defensemen were made to hit people, clear out the front of the net, make that good, get the puck off your stick, give it to the forwards. Now, like in Fox, Miller's the same way, Trouba's the same way. The defensemen now are more made, not limited to, but they're more made to get the puck up, skate it out of the zone. Fox probably, like I have a hard time playing in today's game the way I played back then. Fox would have a hard time playing in that game that I played, based on the way he plays now. He holds on to the puck too much for that game back in the 80s. For the game now, that's what he's made to do. That's why he's one of the best defensemen in the game, because he does hold on to the puck. Let me see. If Miller loses confidence after his F-ups, what would you say about Miller? Tighten up, dude. Let's go. Yeah, well, it's nice to say tighten up, but again, learning so much about mental health. This is to me, hold on a second. He needs to develop a mean streak. Yes, it'd be nice if he was meaner, but I just don't see that that's the kind of good guy that he is. Here's what I do. Let's make some assumptions with Miller. Let's say that he's maybe a little bit more fragile mentally, right? He's not that tough guy. For me, I'd put in the summer, I put him on a weight training program to put some muscle on. Now you give yourself that license to be confident physically, because you've done the work. You've worked in the gym, and you just make yourself into a stronger person. And it's also the mental part too, where get with somebody that's an expert, and talk to him about getting out of his comfort zone, like physically doing things. I work with young people, and I do things with them, like getting into cold showers. It's something you don't want to do. You're in a nice warm shower, all warm and everything, feels comfortable, and then you turn the water cold. So doing things that you don't want to do, that aren't going to kill you or anything like that, but it just makes you uncomfortable. We joke around about me going without air conditioning for the summer. The drill is to make yourself mentally tougher, to just say, okay, this doesn't bother me. It isn't just getting through it. It's saying, okay, it doesn't affect me. There's a lot of different things you can do like that. Diet wise, I get with people like, taking fast food out of the diet. That's healthy as well, but it's also getting yourself out of comfort. Anything that you've been doing all the time, that's partly the reason I get up at 3:30 in the morning, is that, do I want to get up at 3:30? Do I want to make the bed? Right away? No, I don't really want to, but it's doing things that make me better, that I don't have to do. Nobody else is making me do that. And I think with Miller, and that's just young people in general, like learning to do things that you don't want to do, but that are going to make you better. Now there's nothing, when you are faced with a problem like a turnover during the game, it doesn't affect you as much, because you say, okay, that's part of life. I'm going to make mistakes. Bad things are going to happen to me. I'm used to being in, and when those you make mistakes or bad things happen to you, you now are out of your comfort zone, and people just don't want to be out of the comfort zone. That's just human nature. You'd rather be comfortable. So when those things happen, you're more used to those bad things happening to you, and you're out of your comfort zone. If you're used to that, then it doesn't affect you as much. Again, that's been the thing for me with writing the book and going back and look at old games that I played in. That sounds funny, but that would be one of my biggest skills is getting over the stupid mistakes I make sometimes. Like I watch myself play and I think, why didn't I do that? But then right away, I don't hesitate. There's no hesitation. I don't change my game. It doesn't look like it bothers me. I just plow ahead, go run somebody over. It's one of my teammates picks up the puck and then makes it. And when you look at something, the person looked at it like briefly, they'd say, "Oh, good play, Tom." Well, it wasn't a good play at all. I make a bad play, but then I just immediately just say I'm moving forward. As I told the story before, I was watching the game and I played it over and over. We're playing the game at the Garden. And I'm carrying the puck up the ice. Ron Duguay's about 10 feet ahead of me, and I just had to shovel the puck to him. And I go to pass it to him, and it's like it exploded, like it's a grenade, and goes to Larry Murphy, great player, Hall of Fame player ultimately with the LA. And I just within half a second, I was right on him, ran him over. Steve Vickers picked up the puck, went in and had a great scoring opportunity. So most people would think, wow, great play, Tom. It wasn't a great play at all. It was just, you learn to make mistakes. You learn that you're going to make mistakes. In fact, if you listen to Navy SEALs, they train, they want to know where the mistakes are. They know they're going to happen, but they need to complete their mission. So they know, okay, here's the mistake. How do we recover from it? So, and I think with Miller, again, not knowing him that well, it just seems to me when I watch him, his mannerisms, that he doubts himself a little bit, which that happens. And again, like I said, it's only his 6th year playing. So Nikki loves Rempe, would love to teach him how to defend himself. I guess you agree with me that Rempe needs to be dressed. Yeah, I wasn't a believer in that when this series started, but I do think they play better with him in the lineup. And even if he's not playing that much, at first my thought it was like, geez, if he's only going to play 3 or 4 minutes, he's kind of wasting that spot. But you know what? He is that impact player. And to his credit, too, he's being smart about not trying to, not taking penalties. And the referees are targeting him, too. And again, that's human nature because he's a big guy, his reputation. Let me see. Coming to you live from the Mid-Atlantic. Oh, well, a little cruise there, Tony? Okay, what do we got here? Have you seen the initial announcement of trophy winners before the show? What's the sense in having a show postseason? I don't. They haven't really worked. Yeah, okay. Yeah, I think that all started during the pandemic too, right? So they've done it differently. A lot of it is TV ratings. I think I'm really high in the NHL. The things they do, so they've got some reason for doing it that way. I don't know what that is, but I thought Miller's too soft. He did nothing to stop that first goal. Well, okay, we've been talking from Miller for a while, and I can see the frustrations from the Ranger fans why they feel like he's too soft. Again, just like we have been with Lafreniere, you be patient with Lafreniere, and now to see the way he's playing, like the goals he's scoring are just they're highlight reel goals. And I still think the same thing with Miller. It takes longer for a defenseman. He's only been a defenseman for 6 years, which is actually kind of amazing that he's playing in the NHL after only playing for 6 years. So I would be really patient with him. Big guy like that. Does he have to? I think he needs to really work on his mental part of his game and his physical part of the game during the offseason. Like getting stronger physically would make him stronger mentally and really believe in himself more. I got the sense just from his mannerisms that he just, when something goes wrong or he's almost looking for something to go wrong. Like the first turnover in game 3, he went to rim the puck around the boards. And now, first of all, he has to have a winger on the boards there to help him. And the winger was there. He didn't get out, but he's got to be more decisive. Like you go to make that rim around the boards, you've got to hammer it. Got to give it. I just see him again. I feel like he's doubting himself a little bit. But Barry Shelley's here. All right, now we're having a show. Now it's a show. All right, just so I remind everybody too, at 11 o'clock or before, Jeremy Schaap from ESPN is going to join us. He's got a documentary coming out on ESPN about the '94 Ranger team. So we're going to talk about that. And I've never met Jeremy before. I really admire him. He's good in his job. His father is fantastic too, Dick Schaap. So I'm back home. On the way back home for the cruise. All right. Let me see here. Tom Brian Trotch was on Nice Press, and they were laughing about Trotch and Kevin Stevens' cruise. Oh, yeah, that video is pretty cool. They were giving it to Bellows. It was right in front of the bench, the Pittsburgh bench. I think it was in Pittsburgh too. And they were just giving it to Bellows. That was classic. Oh, man, we're giving. I don't remember Trottier ever talking that much when he was with the Islanders, but man, they were giving. That was embarrassing for poor Bellows. Like to watch that now, if you're Bellows, Oh God. He was hearing his emotion. Well, okay. It's and I agree with you, Peter, that ideally you'd like to play with a little anger, but I don't see that that's who he is as a player, as a person. But again, I'm a big believer that like, so if you work out in the gym, you make yourself stronger. He's that lean, tall, lean guy. I'd love to see him get in the gym and get it really build up some muscle mass. And then you're going to feel better about yourself, feel stronger about yourself, and then also work on your mental part of your game as well. Like again, understanding, like not being afraid of mistakes. That's one of the biggest things. If you're going to be successful in life in anything you do, but if you're going to be a professional athlete, you cannot be afraid of mistakes. You know, I saw Bill Parcells talking to Phil Simms before a game one time. They went to videos, and he said Parcells said to me, "Are you ready to throw 2 or 3 interceptions?" Because like he wanted him to play that. You know, listen, you got to throw the ball, and sometimes you throw the ball, you're going to get intercepted. And that, I think that was a great thing for him to say, because don't worry about it. Like, you've proven that you're a player. Miller's proven that he's a player. Don't worry about making mistakes. Make plays. I was so fortunate to play with, Phil Esposito, Hall of Famer, Larry Robinson, Wayne Gretzky. Those guys always make mistakes because they're always trying to do things. They want to be difference makers out there. And that's part of it. And I just want to see Miller. Listen, his skill level, you can't give up on him as fans. Like, he's this big, good skater. You don't find defensemen like that very often. Again, does he have to work on some things? Absolutely. But let me see. Any stories of? It was always that stuff. Yeah, always yapping at each other. Yeah, it's toned down. Some of the stuff we said to each other back then was it was very good. But it's always contests to see. But there's some guys you just stayed away from because you knew they were really good at it, and you weren't going to win the contest. So just shut up and yeah. Let me see. What's this say? Tom froze on my end. Well, we're still going here. Master Gresser's great Christian guy. So yeah. Oh, he's vicious. Yeah. Even with his own teammates. I mean, not as vicious, like mean kind of stuff, trying to get him going. But in the locker room, I didn't realize that James Patrick said this. We were doing a show. And if it's frozen, Barry, I'm assuming it's on my side because everything's fine here. But Gresh was James Patrick said this with Gresh, and I guess we ran the locker room. I didn't quite remember that as much, but yeah, you want to stir the pot a little bit. You want to have some fun in the locker room. New guys come to the team. You want to make them feel good, so you pick on them a little bit. And there's always, and it was kind of the more childish it was, the more inappropriate it was, the better it was too. Used to love Nikki and I were talking about how when Herb Brooks, because a lot of guys with Herb, he got his aura about him. Guys were kind of scared of him, and he didn't like that. He wanted guys to rip into him. He wouldn't admit that, but so we always picked on Herbie. Oh God. Although I've talked about this too. Herbie still meant so much to my career. But when I heard Mike Allison on the Full Change podcast, which you guys can listen to on all podcast platforms, please like, share, and comment. But when Mike Allison made the comment to me in the podcast, and really matter of factly too, that he had contemplated suicide because of Herb, that really made me step back and realize, man, that's some of the stuff that Herb did. It just didn't seem to bother me. But I guess and Mike even said this, some guys are a little bit more sensitive to it. So that really kind of changed the way I look at some of the things that Herb did. So I've heard back in the day, Beck used to scream at who we would play tougher. No, he didn't do that. Teammate, he's a leader. He wouldn't do that. He may take him aside privately and say to him that he didn't do it. But no, Barry never did. I guarantee you. I never heard that. No, nobody ever did that. We always just, who a player was as a player was his decision to be. And if he was on our team, then we supported him. I could see where people would think that with Willie Huber, because he was 6'4" or whatever he was. He didn't play that tough game, but he was a major contributor to our team. Power play, penalty killing, smart, shoot the puck. Helene Elliott contacted me one time because Phil Esposito had said some bad things about Willie in the podcast, and we didn't defend Willie, and we should have. And Helene was right. She contacted me. She said it'd be better if you guys had backed him up. But Helene was just talking about how he was just too big to play the way he did. But that's not a bad thing. That's not her fault. So no, Barry wouldn't do that. I don't know of many guys, especially captains, that would do that. They would, if that's part of being a captain. If you felt like Willie needed to play tougher, then you could pull him aside, go for a beer with him, have a private little meeting. But you can't get guys. Fighters fight, hitters hit, goal scorers score. That's why I talked about the Pasternak thing in Boston there with his idiot coach there at Montgomery, where they, late in the game, and Tkachuk challenges Pasternak to fight. Pasternak's not a fighter. Like, they didn't. I was a shot blocking hitting guy. Nobody asked me to score goals, so because I wasn't a goal scorer. Same thing with Willie. Willie wasn't a fighter and everything. He would fight, but so like when Pasternak comes to the bench and says, "Listen, I'm going to fight him." No. First of all, his teammates, if they knew that, should have stepped up and said, "No, you're not fighting him. I'm coming out and fighting him. I'm going to let him know that you would have fought him, but I've told him, no, you're not. You don't let star players like that get a fight, get hurt." And it proves it does nothing for the team. Sure, they didn't fire up Boston. If anything, it fires up Kachuk's team because he's going to beat the crap out of one of the star players, and his teammates aren't doing anything about it. That was just that just shows me that what's his name, the little bald coach there behind the bench, Montgomery just doesn't know what he's doing. And then, like I said before, God, he does this thing like there's that one game was a dive, and he's pretending he's diving behind the bench. And if I was a player, I'd be like, yeah, shut up, you're embarrassing us. So no, so yeah. I guess my point is when I got in that ramble is that players play the way, and then if management doesn't like the way they're playing, then they can make a trade for him or not play him. But no, they're all fit together and we all support each other as a team. So Barry would never yell at Willie Huber like that. So false. Let me see here. All right, Barry's back. All right, Gresh was setting up Nicky Scher's Italian tablecloth. Was it great? Nicky Greff just, yeah, that was a good story. I can remember that just like it was yesterday too. That was funny. When guys go, I'm talking about Larry Playfair like that too. I played with him in LA, and guys like that really take their time for these, like putting these things together and practical jokes. It's really funny because part of the humor in it is the fact that it took so much time to put it all together. I've told how when Larry Playfair, I was back in New York, first time back in New York after getting traded. So I'm all excited. We're playing back in Madison Square Garden in the morning skate, and I'm taking a cab back to the hotel. And Larry had gone my suit pants and sewed, like, a little pocket that hangs in your pants where you put your money. So he sewed my money into, like, he sewed the top of that so I couldn't get into the money. Now, I don't realize this until I get back to the hotel in the cab. Now I'm trying to get in my pocket to pay for the cab driver. And the cab driver doesn't speak English. So he thinks I'm trying to rip him off. So I have to rip my pocket open to get the money out. But the fact that he went to so much time, and it was perfectly sewed together too. It wasn't just like thrown together. He must have spent a good half hour on it. And it was hilarious. And Larry was this big, tough guy too, But when you do something like that and you come back and he'd be giggling like a little kid. So those guys are fantastic. Yeah. Let me see. Yeah. Did you guys compare your girlfriends with the opposition? All that stuff. I don't think we ever did get to that. Once in a while, we got really bad guys to get on the wives. Kids were off limits. Let me see. Tom, did you play for Brampton Blues? No, I played for the Bramalea Blues. Oh, did they? The Brampton won the Centennial Cup. Very cool. Nice. Yeah. It was the Bramalea Blues back then. We played at Victoria Park Arena. Just talked about that, how I did a video for Rick Hay, my old coach. Fantastic part of my life at that age, like 15 years old. And he just got inducted into the Brampton Hall of Fame. So Brampton and Bramalea are, I don't know how to describe that, like Chinguacousy Township, I think it is. Oh, no, Dukes was a fighter. Dukes could fight. He was a lover too, but he could fight. You watch some old videos of Dukes, he was tough. He gave it to somebody at the Garden for Philly. The guy was really I think Dukes kind of surprised him because, again, Dukes did have the reputation, obviously, with the hair and the whole bit, but he would fight, and he was a good fighter too. Yeah. Well, I guess the funniest one was because of the whole situation. So Mike Rogers and I were great friends who played together. He was actually my best man when I got married. He screwed that up. Should give me better advice. But he, so he used his old coho sticks, and the top of where the blade was about 6 inches up, they would have this tape that they put on, this clear tape with red lines. There's like 5 or 6 red lines. So every once in a while, I tried not to do it too much. I would take a saw and cut it like 3/4 of the way through, and right where the red tape is, so you couldn't really see it. And so one day he was in a bad mood. So I went to the stick rack, and he only had like 3 or 4 sticks. So I went and got every stick. So, clearly, so I got every stick cut, and goes out there, and he's in a bad mood for some reason. And he knows that I'm the one that's doing it, obviously. And he shoots puck, and now breaks the stick. Now everybody on the team knows that this is going on, right? So they're trying not to make it look like they know, but they're dying laughing. So goes back to the locker room, gets the next stick out, takes a shot, breaks it. And he says something like to me, like he says, if you cut any more of my sticks, I'm going off the ice. And like, so okay. So of course he comes back out, break, one more. And the guys they're dying. They can't hold back. They know what's going on. And they're anticipating that now the last one's coming out. He's going to lose his mind. So he comes out and shoots it and six big, and he leaves practice. And he wouldn't talk to me for a week. And then he, after about a week, he came and apologized to me for not talking to me for a week. I think, well, Mike, I think it was kind of my fault, but okay, I accept your apology. So that kind of stuff like that would happen. It was pretty funny. Oh, God. And it's like, it's so stupid and childish. That's the funniest thing about it, right? It's like, oh, yeah. Sorry, close to JD. I don't know. Yeah. So I was going to break the news because when he stepped down so Don Waddell is my old college roommate at Northern Michigan University. We played together, great friends. And so he stepped down from his job as president and GM of the Carolina Hurricanes after they lost. And the owner there is a very difficult guy to deal with. It's okay to be demanding and want to do well, but it's the way some of the stuff it wasn't just with Don. It was just rude and disrespectful behavior. So Don had enough. And so he left. So I called him up, feel bad for him. He says, don't worry. He says, there'll be news coming out in a couple of days. And I said, well, what's going on? So so we went to Columbus as president and GM. So JD will still be there as a senior advisor. I haven't talked to JD yet. I don't know how he's feeling about. He's getting paid a lot of money. He had signed a big contract with the Rangers, like $5 million a year. So he had fired. So now he's guaranteed to make that $5 million. It may be offset a little bit by, like, if Columbus was going to pay him, $1 million, then he still get $4 million from the Rangers. So he was still fine financially, but JD's got his pride too. So again, I haven't talked to him yet. I'm sure, JD wants to be successful. Wants the teams he's with to be successful. He wants to be successful himself. So I'm sure he's not happy about it. But listen, he's had a fantastic run as a player. His broadcast career was brilliant. Man, he was good, and he really worked at it too. And he's told me before that that was a conscious decision about being the best that he could possibly be, and he was that at broadcasting. And he wanted to do the same thing as president. He was in St. Louis, Columbus, the Rangers, back to Columbus. So I'm sure he's disappointed by it, but it ends for everybody at some point. I'm not saying it's over for JD, but I remember JD was in St. Louis, and I had Dallas Drake as a client, and he'd been captain of the St. Louis Blues, and the Rangers bought him out of his last year of his contract. And I remember JD saying to me, "Stop! That happens to everybody. We all it has to end for everybody at some point." And that's, again, when it's happening to you, you don't like it, but. So Don will go in there, and he's done it. I mean, listen, you got to give Ron Francis some credit there too from Carolina for doing some of the stuff. But then Don's come in and really, done some fantastic stuff. Bringing Rod Brind'Amour as coach. Brind'Amour signed a new contract to stay there. Apparently, people were speculating that there's potential him going to Seattle because that job was open. And him and Francis had worked together before, but I think the story with Ron Francis is what I hear is that he doesn't want to have anybody there that's going to outshine him. And Brind'Amour's got a pretty dynamic personality. And so Francis wants to be. So Bilesman a little bit more of a laid back guy. He won't be front and center. And again, this is what I hear from stories. So I don't know Ron Francis played against him, but really don't know him that well. So yeah, JD will be fine. He's done fine. Like financially, he'll be fine. Career wise, I don't know how he feels. So he's got to be. I'm 66, so he's got to be 70 or older. So does he want to continue to work? I'm sure he does. He won't want to be out of it. But again, he'll still be senior advisor there. I think there's another alternative governor. I think it was too. Toulon, that's who it was. Yes. Yeah. Yeah. I called it Ranger Smurfs. Yeah. I remember that because Dukes dropped his gloves and Poulin could fight too. And Poulin turned around kind of surprised that Dukes dropped his gloves, and then Dukes smoked him, knocked him right in his ass. Yeah. Who pulled the best? Oh, by far. I didn't know, to this day, I didn't know who done it out in LA. But because by the time I got to LA, Bob Bourne and I are roommates, and we've done everything. So we're constantly pulling pranks, putting water in guys' beds in the road and stuff. And so so Bob and I got out and had a couple of cocktails and got back to the room 2 or 3 in the morning. And we were staying in hotels at Edmonton. It was one of those hotels where all the rooms were around like a big lobby. And the guys had actually Marc-Andre Fleury posted a video of them doing this. I wonder if he saw us doing it. But anyways, so Bernie, I didn't know it was Bernie. Jim Fox came on our podcast too, and he was there at the time, and he was telling me it was Bernie. I didn't know it was him. And there's other guys too. But they got into their room, and got everything out of the room, nightstand, lamps, everything, beds, moved it all out in the lobby, set it up perfect, just like it was in our room. So we come back to our room at 2 or 3 in the morning, wanting to jump in bed. There's our room. That would by far be the best one. Because again, it was one of those things that took some time to do it too. Like they had to put some effort into it. So yeah, I was watching a video recently, and I don't know if it was recently that they did it or if it was just ultimately posted. The first time I saw it was Marc-Andre Fleury had done it, and it was pretty good. So I'm going to take credit for that. I'm sure he was watching the show and he did what I told him to do. Marc-Andre Fleury's funny. He would have been a great guy to play with. Great competitor, great player, but funny guy too. Like if you watch some more videos of him, some of the stuff he says and does. He liked the practical jokes. Let me see. Yeah. Let me see now. When you're drafted from the Rangers, did you play with the Rangers or did you go minus first? Great question there, Frank. So I finished my senior year of college, and we got to the national championships. Ultimately lost to North Dakota in the final game. Went back to Marquette for a couple of days, then they flew me into New York, signed my contract, and I practiced a couple of days with the Rangers. And then this was the plan. Then they sent me to New Haven, which was their farm team. So I played the rest of I think it was like 1 or 2 more games in the regular season and then the playoffs. One of the best things that ever happened to me too. I really, realized, so it was my first taste of pro hockey, like everything's, you're just in awe of everything, and there's no, back then, obviously there's no, Twitter or anything. So you had no access. You didn't know what the pro life was like at all. So went there and then I knew when I left there, I realized, okay, I've got to get in great shape. So I went back to Marquette, Michigan during the summer. I had a fantastic. I was jacked when I got back to training camp and had a really good camp and ultimately made it. So yeah, that was a big part of me being a player. JD played with Nystrom in Calgary and loved toughness and muscle. So why not unprotected? I'll never understand how he didn't have someone dressed. Boggles the mind. Well, I don't know what you're talking about there. We had lots of tough guys. Yeah. And we had my first year in the league, Barry Beck, Gresh could fight, Doogie could fight, I could fight, Eddie Hospodar, Chris Katsopoulos, Nicky Fotiu. So nobody was unprotected. Now, when Herb came along, things changed a little bit. But we still were a real competitive team. Just that it was less tough guys and more skaters. But the skaters, like the Mark Pavlages, the Rob McClanahans, although they weren't fighters, they would still stand in there and battle. They would, and then we have George McPhee, obviously, Brian McKellen at certain times. So the Rangers were. Jeff Gordon did a good job. He built a soft team and must have abused the team. I feel bad for them, but Dolan felt the brand. Yeah, but remember, so they knew they didn't have a tough enough team. So JD and Jeff Gordon knew that. But the problem is in the stage of their development, like they sent out the letter saying they're going to retool the team. In the stage of their development, they weren't going to win. And they wanted to have as much spots as possible for young kids to get their feet under them. Then now you decide, okay, do I need to make some changes and all that? So they knew they had to toughen up. But listen, Mr. Dolan, it's professional sports. Like JD and Gordon were great guys. They both moved on to other jobs. And that's the thing. Coaches get fired. That is pro sports. People are always getting fired and hired. It's. And nobody likes it. Like I talked to JD after he got fired from the Rangers, and he was fine. He knew he'd get another job. He understood the business. He said, "Okay, that's the way it works. You don't like it. I mean, it was a dream for JD to be back with the Rangers running the team, and he didn't want to leave. But he understood that that's the game. That's the way the business works. So again, they knew that they were not a tough enough team. But again, you cannot waste spots. Like a young team where you're not going to make the playoffs. You get young kids in the lineup. And you want to have more young kids in the lineup. You can't waste a spot on a tough guy or a couple of tough guys as opposed to developing young players. And, it was one incident. Well, there was also the incident Matt Martin hit Trouba and gave him a concussion. He was out, but that would have happened no matter what. That was a hit. It wasn't a dirty hit. So Parker McDonald, that's right. Parker McDonald was coaching there. And he was the old school coach too. This is New Haven when I got sent to New Haven. Same practice every day. He'd stand in the middle of the ice for 45 minutes and blow the whistle. And the guys knew exactly what the drills were. They were always the same practice. And he was a good guy though too. It's just that's old school. That's what it was. So totally different from like a Herb Brooks. So named head coach. Did you play? No, played. He played at the same university. He was there probably a good 10 years after I was there. Yeah, because they won the national championship in 1990, I think it was. I left in 1980. So I got to know Jim Meldo. Actually, he was coming out as a player when I was getting started as an agent. So it was him and Dallas Drake. And our old buddy Walt Kyle. He's coaching there, and he was good friends with Donnie Mean, another agent, a pretty successful agent. And it's a tough spot for Walt, because I'm coming to him and say, well, listen, I want a player, and he's got loyal. He doesn't want to give all the players to me, because then it ruins his relationship with Donnie Mean. So he gave Jimmy Hiller, went with Donnie Mean, and I had Dallas Drake. So worked out good. I mean, Jim's had a fantastic coaching career. His playing career wasn't. His skating, I think, was a lot, but he was a smart player, smart coach. I'm glad to see he got the head job there too. Let me see. You had a rep of throwing hands coming out of college. Yes. Again, I've told the story so many times. I mistakenly thought I was the toughest guy in the world coming to college. I really did. I'm not exaggerating when I say that. I really thought that. But then when you get to the pros, and you realize, oh God, it's like it isn't just like the fighting part. It's the fighting every game. Once you establish yourself as that fighter, then that's it. There's the old saying: if you come in as a crusher, you try to be a rusher, you're soon to be an usher. So once you establish yourself, if you want to stop fighting, you better be one heck of a player. I mean, Stan Mikita was one guy they talked about. I can't remember him when he first started, but apparently he was really like a mean player when he first started, and then stopped taking penalties and just concentrated on being a player. So he was good enough that he could do that. But let me see. JD as team president with Tom Wilson, not the 80-81 team. JD as team president with Tom Wilson. I don't know. What's your? I see. Okay, I got you here. JD's team. Yeah. So again, I apologize, Jack. I didn't understand what you're saying there. So you're saying that JD had put it together a soft team, but again, after talking to JD, they knew that. They knew they were not tough enough, but again, they didn't want to raise the spots. They wanted young kids to be playing. So, and the reality is, there isn't many guys like Tom Wilson out there that would do what he did. Because like throwing around Panarin, that's. Like most tough guys just wouldn't do that. They'd more like a Ryan Reeves kind of guy wouldn't even mess with Panarin. That's embarrassing. Like real tough guys don't do that. That's why they get talking Pasternak fighting for Boston there in the Florida series. That's just that bothers me. That shows again like that Montgomery, the coach of Boston, just doesn't understand the game, the team, but like the team dynamics too. Like the team, he should have either somebody in the team could have stepped up, or he should have given the opportunity to somebody else on the team. Yeah, I know Pasternak doesn't want to look like he's backing down, but who cares? He's not a fighter. I guess he's a goal scorer. So that's I did not like that. So Tom and Frank Beaton, guys like Dan Clark were good players. Yes. Jim Petty, tough goal. Yeah, Jim Seaweed Petty. I'll never forget my first practice I went to in New Haven. Petty was number 32 or whatever it was. And he's sitting on the bench during practice, and he's got a sign, Union Local 32, whatever his number was, on strike. He didn't want to practice. And practices were nothing too. That's one of the things when we first turned pro. Like Freddie Shero, like we would hardly practice like 45 minutes. I remember one time before a game, and we had like 45 minutes practice, and then Freddie Shero says, all right, 3 times around off. And I know they're being sarcastic, but Barry Beck and Ron Duke be like, "Oh my God, we can't do that. We got to play tomorrow." All this kind of stuff. It was kind of funny. They were being sarcastic about it. But all right, so again, we're going to have Dick Schaap. Oh, shoot me, not Dick Schaap. That was his father, Jeremy Schaap, coming on here pretty soon. Hopefully in a couple of minutes. He's got a new documentary coming out on the '94 Rangers. He had a lot of interviews apparently with Mark Messier and Adam Graves and John Dallapino from the writer. Yeah. Is that blonde? I saw him. Yes, that's his new wife. Oh, it's terrible. I forget it. She's something. She runs a lumber company. She's tough. Yes, Dick Schaap was fantastic. Yes. I actually doing a little homework on Jeremy. I didn't realize they lost Dick like in 2001. Kind of a tragic story from what I read there. He's gone in for a hip surgery, and there's a mess up. They were giving him. He also was taking the heart medication for the months leading up to the surgery, and something from the complications of the heart medication, they ended up losing him in the hospital. So sad story. Yeah, he was great. What a boy. Both those guys too. Really, Dick and Jeremy are really like, I looked at them as like really classy guys, like really well respected. So again, Jeremy Schaap should be coming on any minute here now. We're going to discuss his career. Here he is right here. We were just talking about him too. Just talking about him behind his back. Jeremy, how are you?
I'm good, Tom. How you doing?
Good. Great to meet you finally. We were just
Great
talking
to
about
meet you.
how we were talking about how you and your father both had that, or still do have that reputation. You're very classy, like really well respected guys. That's pretty cool.
That's nice of you to say. Thank
Yeah,
you. If
very good.
only my colleagues felt the same way about me.
Oh, ESPN's a tough place, isn't it?
Very tough environment.
Wow.
Environment. Those sets, it's no feelings are spared at any time.
But we were just talking about that too. A good friend of mine, John Davidson, had been running the Rangers and got fired. And I remember talking to him after. He said, "Tom, that's just the business. I mean, whether it's fair or not really doesn't matter, right? It's just
tough business. Tough business. Not a lot of jobs. A lot of people want in. That's the way.
Now, are you still with ESPN?
I am. Yes.
Okay. Good.
Yes. Yeah.
Good.
31 years and counting.
Yeah.
I just, the way I look at it, I just need another 20, 25 years.
Sure. There you go.
I'll be happy. I'll be ready to go at that point, when I'm like 79 or 80.
There you go.
Like
would you ever think of going to another network?
I'm
putting you on the spot. I'm putting you on the spot, aren't I? Yeah.
Look, I have the best job in the company. I mean, I hope none of my bosses are watching because, that's not the kind of thing you want them to know necessarily, but I've got the best job in the business.
Right.
There are very few places, right? I mean, there's no other place where I can do the kind of work that I get to do, which is this long form storytelling, working with the best people in the business, the best producers, the best editors, the best technicians, audio, video, and to do, several documentaries a year, plus cover the daily stuff that's going on in the world of sports. The way I look at it, Tom, right? I've been at ESPN for 31 years and, the place has totally dominated, right?
Yeah.
The sports media landscape. Not because of me, clearly not because of me.
You're part of it.
Coincidentally, I've been very lucky to be at a place that's been a rocket ship in the industry. And I've got to do everything I could have ever dreamed of doing in the business, covering events, storytelling, news coverage, seriousness of approach to stuff. And so why would you want to be anywhere? I'm just hoping they still want me around.
There you go. But the experience you've had, you can obviously get a job someplace else. But we don't want to be talking that publicly. But
we'll talk to my agent. Yeah, we'll see.
There you go. It's funny. I was playing out in Los Angeles when Wayne Gretzky got traded. So I was back here in New York, and ESPN was really the only sports outlet at that point. And I'm watching in the morning, and they start to announce that Wayne Gretzky's getting traded. I'm no way, Wayne Gretzky's not getting traded. And then it was to the LA Kings, and I'm thinking, because I love playing for the Rangers. When I got out to LA, we had a good team in LA, but it was Los Angeles at that point. Really, nobody cared about hockey. And then to hear that Wayne was getting traded there, man, that changed my life when he got traded. That's pretty cool.
Yeah. You remember Jack Kent Cooke? You remember the line? He owned, the Kings.
Yeah.
He started the Kings, right?
Yeah.
And he was Canadian, obviously. And what the famous line was, right? People told me I should, start a team here in LA because there are 250,000 Canadians in Southern California. Now I know why they live here. They all hate hockey.
I remember that. That's true. That was good. Oh yeah, I remember they had the old white skates and all that kind of stuff and everything too.
Yeah.
So get very, very quickly. I know it's about 2001. Your father passed away, right? Man, he was a great man. I know you probably miss him a lot. Tragic circumstance. I didn't remember the way he passed. That was sad.
Yeah. So he had hip replacement surgery, and it was his second. And it was right, the way, you think about these things in your head, associate things, happening at the same time. It was maybe a week after 9/11, so everything was, so strange and sad at that time. And he went in the hospital and he never got out of the hospital.
Oh.
And something happened to him. It's called acute respiratory distress syndrome.
Right.
And it's not an infection. A lot of people thought at the time that he died of a hospital infection. Acute respiratory distress syndrome is not an infection. I am the furthest thing from a physician, but it's basically a spontaneous reaction that some people have to surgery. And usually it happens based on, I think, some kind of medications they might have been on. He was on some kind of medications, and also in his youth, he had smoked. And even though he hadn't smoked in 25 years, his lungs, I guess, were compromised in some way. So yeah, it was a terrible situation.
Did he play a big role in your career?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, in my life, in my career, I can't say that from the time, I was born that I wanted to be in this business, but pretty early on. And, I was around my dad at work all the time. He took me to all the events. He took me to the office. I spent weekends when I was a kid, he worked at WNBC Channel 4. And, all my memories of childhood are basically running around the corridors of 30 Rockefeller Plaza.
That's cool.
And on the 7th floor and on the 4th floor. And if you're a kid, right, and you're a kid who likes sports, and your father is one of the biggest guys in the business, and he's buddies with all the biggest stars in the world, the Muhammad Ali's, the Walt Frazier's, the Bill Bradley's, and Reggie Jackson's. Like, why? How could you not say, "Boy, I want to do this too"? Right? Like, why would I want to work for a living?
Yeah.
So if you could do something like that,
That's pretty cool. Where so there'd be other great broadcasters or reporters, whatever you want to call them, but they don't always become great friends with the athletes that they cover, right? Like that says a lot about him, that he respected him that much, and trusted him.
Yes, and it was a totally different industry too, right?
Yeah.
Before my time, before your time, there was a different kind of relationship. It wasn't as adversarial between the reporters and the people that they covered, and a lot of it was based on, factors like they traveled together. The guys traveled on the team plane and the team train. When we're talking about beat guys, there wasn't this separation as well in terms of lifestyle, because the players weren't making much more money than the writers. And sometimes they were making less. Yeah. So, they had lives where they could be around each other in different ways. Like Lou Gehrig's best friend was a baseball writer, Fred Lee, right? It wasn't one of the guys on the team. It wasn't Bill Dickey or Joe DiMaggio. It was Fred Lee, and that was not uncommon, because they spent so much time with each other, and they were on a more they were more on the same level in terms of socioeconomics as well. So they're all different factors. And then my father, he was also, he was never a beat guy. He was never a newspaper sports reporter. He'd been a magazine editor, and then he wrote books with the most famous athletes of their time. And so they were business partners, and they became friends. They always became friends. So he wrote books with Dave DeBusschere, with Jerry Kramer, like 5 books with Jerry Kramer, Joe Namath, Tom Seaver, Frank Beard, Bo Jackson, Joe Montana, Hank Aaron. So,
wow,
pretty good guy, right?
There's some names there. Yeah.
Those were, he wrote those books with them about their lives and their voice, and they became friends. And, for a long time there, if you were one of the, preeminent athletes, and you wanted to do your book, you were going to do it with my dad.
Yeah. Wow. That's pretty cool. Okay. So the big thing you've got going on now, you have a documentary coming out next week. Is that correct?
That's right. Next week.
And the 94 Rangers, correct? Very nice.
It's on the 94 Rangers, and it's a different way of telling the story of the 94 Rangers. It's the story of that, great team, but it's also told through the perspective of the McDonald family, Stephen McDonald, Patty Ann McDonald, Connor McDonald. And, New Yorkers, the story, what Stephen McDonald means to the Rangers organization, what he meant to New York and beyond New York. He was a 29-year-old patrolman in his second year on the NYPD when he was shot and paralyzed on duty in Central Park, spent the rest of his life confined to a wheelchair, respirator dependent. But, he became a symbol of forgiveness and faith and brotherhood, of unity, somebody who, he forgave the teenager who had shot him.
That's right. I forgot about that.
Jones, 15-year-old. And he lived, he lived a kind of saintly life. And his work from there on was about bringing people together and overcoming our differences, and finding solutions to prevent violence. Yeah. And he went to conflict zones around the world to share his message, and his impact, his influence was immense. Yeah. In a big, big way, but also I think in the Rangers organization, as where he was revered, and he was always there in the corner, and where he really, in some ways, raised his son Connor, who's now an NYPD captain. I mean, Connor was Patty Ann was pregnant when Stephen was shot. Connor was born 6 months later. He was baptized at Bellevue Hospital, and his father's, I think, in the hospital room. Maybe they went to another room. I can't remember exactly, by Cardinal O'Connor. And on that very same day, he made the announcement. Patty Ann spoke his words that he had forgiven Shabbat Jones, and that was a very powerful moment in a city that was in crisis with crime at that time.
Did you know what else I think was important too? Obviously, him and the way he handled himself and their family, but also the guys they had on the team, like the Adam Graves and Mark Messiers, right? They're the perfect guys to really accept him as part of the team, right?
No, and Adam Graves. I mean, and we spoke to for the project. Those core four guys, Brian Leach and Mike Richter and Adam Graves and Mark Messier, and they all have a connection with Steven. I think he really, and Steven's no longer with us. He died in 2017 at the age of 59, but still with Patty Ann and Connor. And it comes from, I think, a very deep place. Those guys, what Steven meant to them, the example that he provided, and especially so, I think, for Adam Graves, because he came from a family. His father was a longtime police officer in Toronto, and he and Steven had that special bond. Steven was a third generation member of the NYPD. Adam knew what it was like to be in a family of police officers. And, I think that inspiration that he gave them, and the whole idea, and the name of the show is No Easy Victories. And that's a quote from Steven about the Rangers and about the award, the Stephen McDonald Award for Excellence, going above and beyond. But he said words to the effect of, there are no easy victories in life, and we as, the men of the New York Rangers who play for the New York Rangers, they know that, we, their fans, know that, and that's the way we like it. No easy victories. And
obviously you've gotten to know Adam too, and when you see Adam from a distance, and then you first meet him, you think to yourself, he can't be that good of a guy. It's just he's that's
right. Yeah.
Then you get to know him. It's like he's better maybe than
he's unbelievable.
He's great.
He's one of those guys, who's just always been a pleasure to deal with.
Yeah.
Who's thoughtful, who's obviously very soulful, and was a hell of a player, obviously.
Yeah. He's also got a great sense of humor, because I'm a total smartass, right? So we were at an event together probably 10 years ago. We're sitting at a table signing autographs. Kids are coming by. And obviously I'm much older than he is. So I would say to people, I said, man, it's so good to be sitting beside this young man right here. I watched him play all the time growing up as a kid, like reversing the roles. And he's looking at me, and he doesn't know me at all, really. And he's looking at me like, what are you talking about? And so he finally got on to what I was. So now he gives it to me all the time now. He's very good. Like he just, because he knows he's got to get the upper hand right now. He's good. So he's
great.
Yeah.
He's great. He's just, and he's one of those guys too, what it's like in New York, right? There are certain events, where you can expect people to show up and to be present and to lend themselves to causes. And Adam Graves is one of those guys who's always there.
Yeah, he doesn't just show up. He shows up and really, he understands what he means to the people.
He's there. Yeah. He means a lot. And and because he was such a key part of that team, that team, for obvious reasons, means so much to so many people and continues to. Yeah. When it's won in 84 years, in the way that, you can hardly have a conversation about the New York Jets, right, without talking about Joe Namath in Super Bowl III.
Yeah.
And with the Rangers, it's mathematical as well as all that other stuff.
Well, as you know, the Rangers do some fantastic stuff in the community. A lot of it is with alumni members. So when we go out, it's funny because I'm bald. Adam Graves is bald. There's somewhat of a resemblance.
I'm getting there.
You got a full head of hair there. What are you talking about? So we don't look that much alike, but we're separate. I guess you could confuse us that we're, somewhat look alike. So we'll go to events and I'll be there first. Adam will be coming. People know that he's showing up, and the dads will be with their son or daughter. And they're going, that's Adam Graves over there pointing to me. Right. And I can tell they're getting way too excited about me. Right? It's not. And then Adam shows up, and inevitably the dad looks at me and goes, "Oh God, it's just Laidlaw." It's like it's
just Laidlaw. Nobody Messier, he's bald too. I mean, there's.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, I had that one time we were at the garden skating around, and this young guy with his girlfriend was asking for pictures and autographs, and I could tell he was way too excited about me. And finally, he says to his girlfriend, he says, "Can you get Mark and I another picture?" And I had to say to him, and it's embarrassing. So I had to say to him, "Listen, I'm sorry, but I'm not Mark Messier."
Oh, that's so funny. That happens to me all the time. People are like Adam Schefter. Or what other way? My dad used to always he'd get at the airport and he'd get a little bit upset because Kurt Gowdy was like 20 years older than him. But he'd get Kurt Gowdy and sometimes he'd get Larry Merchant.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, they both got that. So yeah, it's
The
nice.
worst one for me is I get Terry Bradshaw. I'm like, Terry Bradshaw, he's like 30 pounds overweight, for God's sake. Yeah, I know. All right, so listen, I'd love.
Compliment. Bradshaw's a very handsome fella.
Oh, there you go. Yeah, you got bad taste. No, I'm just kidding. So a great concept using the McDonald family. What prompted you to do it that way?
I think it stemmed from these conversations that we were having, probably near the end of last year. Like, okay, it's the 30th anniversary. We want to do something. It's such a big moment in the history of hockey, and it was clear that there was a possibility that this team would go very deep into the playoffs, if not win it all. We'll see. Yeah. And so how are we going to tell this story that's been told so many times before, right? And there have been so many documentaries, there have been so many shows, such a special team, did so many special things, a great playoff run. And it wasn't going to, it wasn't going to fly just doing another piece like, these were the 94 Rangers, and this is what happened at the trade deadline. And, this is what happened when they traded for Messier and brought in Mike Keenan. We wanted it to be a different perspective. And we're thinking about how much the fans meant.
Sure.
How much the fans are a part of the Rangers story, the loyalty, the dedication, all that. And who was a bigger fan? Who was a more important fan than Stephen McDonald, right?
Yeah.
And it's about, how much he loved the organization and how much the organization loved him back.
Yeah.
How much he and his family, derived from that relationship and how much the Rangers derived from that. And so what I think is really cool about this, it really is weaving those stories together about someone who's been so important, who was so important to the Rangers and continues to be. And the parallels, between his story, the No Easy Victories on an entirely different level, and what it took for that team to win.
Yeah.
And he saw those parallels and he talked about them. And I would never equate, what he endured, what he went through with getting through, the playoffs, right, to win a trophy. But that's what that relationship was about. And that's what, the team leaned into. They would see Steven and say, look what he's dealing with. There are no excuses for us.
Sure.
Right. Yeah. And that's part of the story too. But another cool part is that Connor is now 37 and he's a captain in the NYPD. And like most 7-year-olds who are experiencing, something like going through those playoffs in 90, he remembers everything.
Oh, really?
I mean, he remembers every shot.
Oh, cool.
He remembers every save. He remembers every shift. And so we kind of tell the story of those big games and those big series against the Devils and the Canucks a lot through the perspective through a 7-year-old's eyes.
Oh,
it was like for him sitting there behind the glass, watching it all unfold, and Mateau and Game 7 against the Devils, and then Game 7 against the Canucks. And you think about the pressure, right?
Yeah.
And you know this much better than I do. But I can't think. I've been doing this a long time, and my father did it for a long time. I knew all his stories. When you think about how much pressure those guys were under in both of those 7th games, right? Yeah. Like, I don't know if pro athletes have ever been under more pressure.
Yeah. It's Madison Square Garden, the middle of Manhattan, hadn't won since 1940.
Right. Yeah. And to be able to deliver, and in the fashion in which they did, and down to the last second, right?
Yeah.
The face off with a second left in Game 7 against Vancouver, the tension.
Yeah.
Never anything like it.
Yeah. The Messier jumping up and down. Messier was jumping. That was fantastic. Yeah.
It's fantastic.
Yeah. Very cool.
And
how long did it take to put that together?
I'd say we've been working on it, interviews, and it's still being worked on. Probably the first interview I did was with Connor McDonald, I want to say in March. So it's been 2.5, 3 months, which is not a long time for us on these projects.
Yeah. So when you start doing it, do you have the vision of how it's going to ultimately look when you're done?
You do. I mean, you have a vision of, the story and how you're going to tell the story, but you don't know what you're going to get when you sit down and talk to people. You don't know, what you're going to find out that you didn't know previously from your research or just your, from your head. And you have to do the interviews. You have to talk to people to know what the emotional inflection points are.
Sure.
Right. And so, when we went to interview Connor, for instance, we had this thought that this is a great way to tell the story of the 93-94 Rangers. But, you don't know until you talk to Connor and Patty Ann that it sustains a whole show.
Sure.
Right. And then, so we were all thinking, I'm going to interview them and see, what this relationship is all about. What is the meaning, the nature of this relationship between this family and the Rangers? And if they say, it's great, but it's not like one of the biggest things in our lives, then, it's not a show. It's not a real story, but it was that and much more.
Right.
And, when Connor said, the best moments of his life with his father we're at the Garden in 1994 in that spring.
Right.
I mean, to me, it was, it was very emotional. It was very poignant. You think about Stephen McDonald and Connor talks about the things they couldn't do together, right? They couldn't play catch. They couldn't skate together. They couldn't do those things.
Yeah.
They had their father-son moments at the Garden.
Sure.
Cheering on the Rangers. And in 94, because it's the only one they won, right? It's the only one they won since 1940, is just it occupies such a huge place in their lives.
Any surprises for you?
I think, you pretty much know the story of all the big moments in those playoff runs and what it meant and the relationships with Neil Smith and Mike Keenan and all the drama with, Brian Leach and Mike Richter in Game 4 against the Devils. And what is Keenan thinking? And, it was great that Mike Keenan decided to sit down and talk to us. I was just talking to Jim Cerny. He was saying, that's not easy. He doesn't do a lot of that. And he was, he talks about all of it and what was going on and, those weren't big surprise. I think the thing that was most interesting to me was just our conversation with Mark Messier and about the pressure that he felt coming to New York and the questions he had in his own mind about whether he could do what was expected of him.
Well, so he acknowledged that there was some doubt in his mind.
That's what was so interesting to me, because when I think of Mark Messier, I think of the guy who's got no self-doubt, who's totally confident. He's like the Terminator, right? And he had proved everything you could possibly prove. He'd won the 5 in Edmonton, 4 with 1 without Wayne, won the Hart himself the year before. And you think Mark Messier is coming in. Mark Messier is just like, we're doing this, right?
Yeah.
But then you think about it, what he was talking about. Look, he'd spent 12 years in Edmonton, his whole NHL career, right? He had like a few games, right, with Cincinnati and with Indianapolis, Indiana in the WHA. And he's coming to play. He's from Edmonton. He went to high school in Edmonton. He grew up in Edmonton. He spent 12 years in Edmonton. He won 5 cups there. He's coming to New York. Edmonton, New York are very dissimilar places, right? And all those things he achieved, they mattered. They were, they mattered to everybody, but they didn't ensure anything. They didn't guarantee anything. And, how he dealt with that. And then that first season, they win the President's Trophy in 92, but they lose to the Penguins in the playoffs. And then the next year's a disaster, fiasco. They don't make the playoffs at all. And he's getting booed, all that stuff, which people, have kind of forgotten. And then what they delivered in 93, 94, all of that, the Mark story, I think is really interesting.
Yeah. When he made the guarantee against the Devils and they got the hat trick. I remember listening to him talk about that after, and he's kind of like, it sounded like he didn't really mean to say it that way, but then it came out and you couldn't do anything about it. Right. So,
right. Yeah. They were up in Rye and they said something, John Delapina's in there who, was at the time at the Post or at the Daily News, and he was covering the Devils on the beat, but, so it became a big thing. Him and Giannone and Frank Brown, they're like, what did he say? Did he say it this way? Did he say it that way? Is it guarantee? What's a guarantee? All those guarantee things are kind of funny, right? So, Dave Anderson was a good friend of mine, the great writer for the New York Times,
Oh yeah.
Pulitzer Prize winner. And he was there the night that Joe Namath made the guarantee, I think at the Touchdown Club in Miami, right? And he didn't write about it. He didn't even put it in his story because he said he's been guaranteeing this win, since they won whatever the AFL title game or whatever. That's the way.
He thought there's no chance of it happening. So why bother?
No, he's just like, he's been saying this. This isn't news. Now it turns out to be a rare misjudgment from Dave because it was news and we still remember it. But in the moment, like, what is a guarantee? Like, if you're not guaranteeing victory, what are you saying? Like, maybe we'll win? You know what I mean? It's one of those things.
Yeah, good. So when does the documentary come out?
It's Tuesday night, 9:00 on ESPN.
Cool.
Tuesday, 9 Eastern time on ESPN, and then it's streaming on ESPN Plus.
Okay.
And I think it's, as I said, we're still working on it, as we tend to do with these things, right up until the moment you press play.
Right.
But I think it's really good, and I'm just I'm proud to be a part of this team that's put this story together.
Yeah, you know what? And I really mean, I said at the start of the show, I'm really glad we met because I really admired you and your father.
Thank you.
Your careers in what you did, but the way you handled yourself too. So I'm looking forward to seeing this, and congratulations. This is a great project.
Tom, thank you so much.
My pleasure. We'll see you soon.
Bye-bye.